First of all, a great welcome to everyone, and thank you all for your patience, and thank you for bearing us with us until we fix some technical issues. And it's a very great pleasure that I welcome you all today for the session focusing on an often overlooked yet very critical aspect of emergency response: mental health and psychosocial support for older people in emergencies. As we gather here today, we recognize the immense importance that this issue, importance of addressing this unique issue and the vulnerabilities of older individuals during the time of crisis. As we all know, in the time of crisis, the spotlight often is on the immediate physical needs, such as like shelter, food, medical assistance. And however, amidst the chaos and urgency, we must not forget that equally vital aspect of mental health, and especially on older members of our communities. We know during this series we discussed on other demographics like on women, children, and today the older people, we know they are being disproportionately affected by emergencies, facing increased risk of isolation, anxiety, depression, and we'll be discussing all this today. And we got the privilege of coming together to delve into this crucial topic, guided by esteemed expert in the field. And we'll explore the unique challenges faced by all the individuals in emergencies. And without any further delay, I feel very privileged and happy and even lucky to have our speaker with us today. I would like to introduce Dr. Marion. She's an HPSS and protection specialist, over 20 years of professional experience working in the humanitarian and development. She recently supported and provided technical input to help international humanitarian response in Moldova, Indonesia, Mozambique, and Malawi, working closely with country officers and network members to ensure inclusive programming responses with most older people. She worked for many years in the humanitarian and development in Asia, particularly in Sri Lanka, where she worked for several INGOs, managing and providing technical support to their human rights, MHPSS protection, and emergency response programs following the tsunami in 2004, the resumption of conflicts in 2006. She holds a PhD in psychology and is a chartered psychologist and associate fellow of the British Psychological Society. Ma'am, thank you so much for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. And looking at your years of experience, we are eager to hear from you and learn from you. Over to you.
Oh, thank you very much, Hannah. And good morning to all colleagues in India that have made the effort to join this call. It is my privilege and pleasure to be with you, and not only to share with you some of my experience, but to learn from you as well. I lived for many years in Sri Lanka, and I had the privilege of traveling throughout South Asia, including India, a number of times. So I'm really very happy to be here with you. Um, yes, I've worked in this sector for many years. I'm not sure I'm an expert. We're all continuously learning and learning from each other, and that's what this is about. So, Hannah, if you could start the presentation, and colleagues, this is a learning. I'm used to using Teams, but now we have Zoom, so I'm sure you will be patient with me. Today's session is about mental health and psychosocial support with older people in an emergency. And that can be any kind of emergency, whether it's flooding, whether it's a natural disaster, whether it's conflict, and so on. And what I hope to cover in this next hour and a half, and what I want to hear from you, is just really raising awareness about the issue in relation to older people. And as Hannah mentioned, the fact that in many emergency situations, whether they're local, national, or global, older people tend to be left behind, or forgotten. So I just want us to have a look at some of the issues around that, what it is we can do, and also to hear from you. So over to the next slide, please, Hannah. Now, who are HelpAge? We're a global network, and HelpAge International works with partner organizations and network members. So, for example, in India, one of our long-standing network members is HelpAge India, and also another organization called Gravis. So we have over 170 network members and over 91 countries around the world, as the map is showing. And our mission is to promote the well-being and the inclusion of older women and men with and without disabilities, to reduce poverty, discrimination in later life, and also within the sector that I work in is within humanitarian response to ensure their inclusion. Now, here I say rights-based approach. And what I mean by that is older people are entitled, just like anybody else, to receive the adequate and appropriate humanitarian response when an emergency happens. It is their human right. So it's not just out of charity that we do it, but because they are just as entitled as anyone else. So we go on to the next slide, please. Now, these are just top 4 topics that I hope to cover and that I hope to hear from you about. We're going to have an overview of some of the global statistics on growing older, because this is a reality. Population is growing older, it's aging. I'd like us to look at ageism, what you understand by it, what I understand by it, and its impact. Then we might have a short little recap on mental health and psychosocial support, because I know from previous webinars you've covered this a lot in relation to, I think, women and children, in relation to people with disabilities, and in general. So let's have a recap on mental health psychosocial support in the context of an emergency. And then finally, I will share with you some learnings from our work in HelpAge of where do you start? Whether you're a community-based organization, a national non-government organization, or an international organization, where do you start when you're thinking about how can I provide mental health, psychosocial support to older people after an emergency? How do I work with them? What is it that we would set up? So that's where the topics that I'm really hoping to talk about. Okay, so the next slide. Now, Hannah is going to help me with this, and I'm not sure how we're going to do it. I think word cloud or a whiteboard, but I have 2 questions that I want to ask our participants today. And the first one is, what comes to your mind when you hear the term older person or older? I beg your pardon? Oh, yeah. Sorry. Let me see. Can I make that a little smaller? Okay. So you have it there. Okay, so it's all ready. Okay, so my question is, what comes to your mind when you hear the term older person or older man or older woman? So if you could start writing in.
What comes to your mind?
When you hear the term older person, older man, or older woman, what do you think of? Okay, see, now if someone says need care, what else do you think of? You hear older woman, older man, incompetent. I
Yeah.
see
So
Joachim.
Dr. Marion, really sorry for interrupting you, but small information. If anybody doesn't know how to use this, you can see a toolbar to the left corner, and if you press the T button, you can start typing.
And if you have any challenges with that, colleagues, you can also put it in the chat box because I will be checking. So please do keep going. I am writing them down. So I'll just list what I've heard so far. Need care. Helpless was up there. Senior. Okay. Weak. I think someone, yeah, weak. Not well. All right. Depend on others. Thank you. Let's write these down. Depend on others. Anybody else? Let me check the chat. Incompetent. Joachim. My goodness. Incompetent. Experienced. Woohoo. Vulnerable. Sick. Okay. Okay. So we have a long list there, and we'll look at that later. I wonder if we could clear that screen, Hannah, retired. I'll put that down because I want to ask the second question.
Sure.
So while Hannah's clearing that screen, the second question I'd like to ask you, and you can put it on the whiteboard or you can put it in chat, is, well, let me check. How did I word it? I said, how do you feel about growing older? I think that's my question. I can't see my screen now, but it's like, what do you think of?
Yeah, maybe I can put that question up again.
All right, and I'm going to, yeah, how do you feel about growing older? And you can put it in the chat or the whiteboard. It doesn't matter, yeah, whichever. Okay, I saw something there interesting. Okay, someone feels well. No, I think that's from the last one. Okay, so we've got neglected gradually. That's how, all right. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's from Yakam. All right, scared. Yeah. What to do? I love that expression. We use that in Sri Lanka all the time. What to do? So it's what do you feel about how, getting older? Privileged. Nice. I like that one because indeed it is a privilege. A little fear, okay? And it's insecure. Okay, insecure. Lack of interest in new things. That's interesting. Okay. All right, we've got a lot there. So, okay, thank you for that. I have a lot to say about this, just to say. So, Hannah, if we could come out of that. Thank you very much for being honest. That's the first thing I would say. All right. Now, let's go on. Yeah, please. Keep going. That slide will come up. Yeah. Now, if we look back on what you shared with us when I said, what do you think of when you hear older person, older man or woman, need to care, helpless, weak, not well, now incompetent, yeah, I'd have to challenge that, vulnerable, sick. There was other ones as well. So you can see here that older people are often seen in that particular way, frail and needy and helpless. Okay? However, if you click the screen, Hannah, for the next picture to come up, older people are a large and diverse group of people with many skills and capacities, right? What I would say is we age differently. Not everybody is the same, okay? Now, of course, many people, depending on the context they're living in, will have many challenges living with chronic health problems. We will look at disability and be dependent on others. And depending on what country and emergency situation they're in, of course, they'll be needing support. They may be helpless. But what I want to try and get through in that little exercise is how we tend to see older people in stereotypes, right? Whilst we know that older people, many older people, have capacities and skills and coping strategies and an important role to play. Now, in relation to how you feel about growing older, feeling scared, yes. What to do? Well, that's true. A little fear, insecure. Again, it depends on where we're living. It depends on the kind of resources available. And social protection is a huge one as well, which we're looking at pensions. And it's about your health. And WHO are pushing very much for healthy aging, right? So I do understand why we would be feeling scared. It is a privilege to grow older in a way that you're healthy and you can take care of yourself and you're engaged with your community. So I just wanted us to look at that and think about growing old and what we think of when we hear older men and women. Okay, the next slide, please, Hannah, and we'll come back to that later. So important to remember, as I was saying, older people are not all the same. They have many capacities, skills, and roles in society. And the next one, not all older people are inherently vulnerable, right? Just because you're an older person doesn't mean you're actually vulnerable, right? It depends on many different things, and many are still engaged in communities. And the next, however, older people and old age are challenged by ageism and negative stereotypes. And we look at that a little bit. So the next slide is who is an older person? So the first thing is the UN. If you click the slide, Hannah, it defines an older person as someone whose age 60 years or older. In other countries, it looks at 65 plus. Many governments use a pensionable age to set the standard definition. However, families and communities often use other socio-cultural definitions to define age because many places we don't have birth certs. Would anybody like to share with me a kind of socio-cultural or family community way of defining someone as older? Do you want to put up your hand, open the mic? Don't be shy. Shall I start it off? Will I give you a kind of another way that older age is defined? What about grey hair? Yeah? With someone that's with grey hair, no matter how old they are, maybe they're 45, which means young. Maybe they're 40, but if you see someone with grey hair, is it not a kind of socio-cultural way you to say, oh, that's an older person? Yeah? What other kind of socio-cultural way do we? Okay, thank you. We're talking about retired person post 65. But another way in other countries where someone is said to be older is, what if you saw a person who had something like arthritis, right? Having a particular health condition sometimes, is a way that people categorize someone as an older person. What about if you're a grandparent? In many situations, we have grandparents that may be in their 40s, which is not in your 60s, but still would be considered as an older person. So that's what we mean about, the sociocultural ways. In Africa, because of the life expectancy in many countries of Africa, 50 was an age where you were thought to be an older person. And if we click the next slide, Hannah, in India, or if you click, yeah, in India, and if you go back, in India, it's age 60 plus. Okay, so on to the next slide. So here with this slide, I just want us to just touch a little bit on ageism. Now, the WHO, excuse me, they define ageism as stereotyping and discrimination against individuals or groups on the basis of their age, right? And it can take many forms. And as you can see here, it's how we think, stereotypes. And I hope you don't mind me going back to some of the stereotypes that were shared earlier. Incompetent, I would see that as a stereotype, as in, not being able to do something, right? Not being able to maybe even learn a new skill, or, they won't understand, those kind of stereotype. And then along with how we feel, we also have how we think. It's about how we feel, so prejudice, and how we act. That's discrimination towards others or indeed ourselves based on age. So that's what we talk about in relation to ageism. So if we go on to the next slide, I have a couple of more examples. So if you click, it's being disrespected because of your age. Next, it's being treated unfairly because of your age. And the next one is people making untrue assumptions about you because of your age. And a big one throughout the world is you're feeling invisible once you reach older age. And this is very much the case in an emergency. Now, if we go on to the next slide, I won't go through them all, but ageism has a big impact on older people's lives and well-being. There is evidence that has shown negative beliefs can affect in a very negative way a person's health. An older person with, they say in the study, this was done by HelpAge, older adults with negative attitudes about growing older could live 7.5 years less than those with a positive attitude. So if you think back to when I was asking you about how you're feeling growing older, insecure, lack of interest in new things, neglected, gradually, obviously scared, a little fearful, and so on, that can really impact your well-being. And it's really now we really need to start thinking about what it is we can do to challenge ageism within ourselves, within our communities, and within our families. And ageism can be internalized. And in some of my work, talking with, engaging with older people and them talking about, well, I'm just a burden on the family. I should stay quietly there and not get in the way and so on. So these are very important things to think about. So if the next slide, and it's just some statistics. Now, before we go to this next slide, I would like to ask, does anybody have any questions, or is there anything you'd like to ask me at this stage before we go on? Or share anything? No? Well, please put it in the chat or put your hand up. Now, the next thing we're going to go on to is a couple of questions. And I want you to use the chat. Now, there's a couple of true or false and a couple of multiple choice. And it's about the population, the growing, aging population. So here is a statement. By 2030, 1 in 8 people in the world will be aged 60 years or over. Now, is this true or false? What do you think? And please put your answer in the chat. You can put T or F. So let's have a look. Okay, so true. I'm here. I've got 2 trues. I've got 3 trues. Anything else? 4 trues. Okay. Keep going. Few more. True. True. All right. So 1 in 8 people in the world will be aged 60 years or older or over. Okay, let's go on and see the answer, Hannah. False. Not 8, but 1 in 6. 1 in 6 people in the world will be aged 60 years or older. Joachim, you've come in late and you're wrong. I'm sorry. It's actually, this statement is false. Okay? Let's go on to the next one. Now, here's a question. And this is a global, like we're thinking global statistic. What do you think is the percentage of people aged 60 or over? Is it A, 10%, B, 23%, C, 35%, D, 13%? 35%, and I'll be checking on this later. Anybody else? You could put in A, B, C, or D if you want to. 23%, okay. What do you think, roughly? C, 35%, okay, 23%, okay. And I'm going to have to double check this one myself. Okay, let's press the button, Hannah. It's actually 13% globally over the age of 60. And we'll come back and look at that a little later. I think I have another chart. Okay, the next question, Anna. Okay, here's a good one. What is the percentage of the world's population who are 60 years of age or older that have a disability? Is it 15%, 46%, 25%, or 60%? Global population who are 60 years or older, what percentage? C, okay. Anybody else? B. Okay, we got B again. A. Okay, come on now. Few more of you. Make a guess. Think about the webinars you had on PSS on people with disabilities. Can you remember? Because I'm sure the presenter gave the statistic. Okay, let's unveil the answer, Hannah. 46%, right? So almost half, 46% of the world's population who are 60 years or older have a disability, right? And that's something we really need to think about and keep in mind when you are, responding to planning activities in relation to PSS. Because if you're working in a location and you're supporting older people, there's going to be a high percentage that have some form of a disability or another. Now, Now, I think it might be the last question. What percentage of older people will live in lower middle income countries by 2050? Is it 60%? Is it 43%? Is it 80%? 55%? So B, A, 43%. Anybody else want to put an answer in there? D. Thank you, Vishnu. Sorry, my teams. Anybody else? Okay, let's click it, Hannah, because I know time's against us. 80% of older people will live in lower middle income countries by 2050. And why is this important? Because in those countries, and particularly if you think of Asia, there are higher incidents of natural disasters, along with some other, man-made ones as well. But if you look at Asia in relation to, hurricanes, flooding, tsunamis, landslides, droughts, and so on, that is where older people are living. Okay, just 1 second, colleagues. Okay, I think we can move on then to the next slide. Now, with this slide, I want you to really look at this slide, because this slide is showing us where populations are getting older, but from 2015 right up to 2050. And all countries are affected, except for some countries in Africa where there is a very significant younger population. But as you can see, we're looking at Europe, North America, China, and so on, 30% or more. But even in India, you can see the change, and it's gone up now in light blue, 10 to 30%. So what we mean by this is every country is affected and impacted in one way or another. And globally, it's projected that the proportion of the population is expected to increase to around 21% by 2050. Now, if we go on to the next slide, Hannah, what's interesting about the growing population is that most older people are young. They're young old. And what I mean by that are those between 60 and 69, and we're talking about globally 60%. So they mostly need, promotion with some care, but many are still working within, jobs and providing for family, depending on the situation they're in. Middle old is the 70, 79-year-olds. We're looking at 32%. They may have slightly different need. And then the older old are those that are 80 years and above, which is, we're looking globally at 8%. Now, if we go to the next slide, we have some interesting statistics here in relation to Asia. And within this slide, and I think you'll be given the presentation afterwards, you can see that close to 60% of older people in the world are in Asia. 60%. By 2050, the percentage of older people in Asia will be, or they're projected to be, 63%. So 1 in 4 will be an older person. So they have an estimate like 350 million people above 60 years of age by 2050. And if you can see here, the little table there, it's showing you Asia, and it's showing you where India is in relation to countries with the largest numbers of older people. So on the next slide, I won't go through this slide in detail, but I found this, and I think it's really very interesting. So India is no exception to population aging. And here, this study was done, I think this is one of the largest studies done on older people in the world. It's the longitudinal aging study in India, and this is, I think, from 2021. And India's older population is said to be the world's second. So if you look at this particular, and you can look at this later on, this gives us a lot of information in relation to older people from the sample size that they worked with. And I'll mention a little bit about that later. But you're looking at, high blood pressures, right? 37% in India have high blood pressure, injuries from falls, right? 25% have injured themselves from falling in 2 years, right? Sleep problems. 75 million suffer from some form of chronic disease. Now, why is this important when we think about mental health and psychosocial support with older people in emergencies? This is important because this is the situation for a significant number of older people in India before any emergency has happened, right? This is very important information to know in a preparedness, in a way to plan what it is we, as community volunteers, as community based groups, as older people's associations, can start doing now in order to strengthen older people's coping strategies when and if an emergency happens. What is it we need to take into consideration? We need to take into consideration the percentage that have a disability. Can you go on to the next slide, Hannah? So click it and we'll see what it is. So in this study, 40% of older people had some form of a disability. So we're not surprised because we know globally it's 46%. So if I'm planning any kind of psychosocial support, I have to keep that in mind. They have a disability, what type of disability it is. 20% are suffering from mental health issues, right? This is before an emergency. This is like the status at the moment or from the study. So what is it? What support are they getting now? What support can they not get once this emergency happens? And what is it I can do? We have 75 million older people in India suffer from some chronic illness or disease. 1 in 2 over the age of 60. So that we know non-communicable diseases is a big issue, has a big impact on life, has a big impact on well-being. So is this even made worse when an emergency happens? What support do they get? Are they on certain medication? Is that no longer available? Do they have any medication? Do they have access to healthcare? All of those things are impacting their well-being. And 24% of older people have difficulty in performing daily, everyday, usual life activities that you and I take for granted: walking, eating, and personal care. So when you're thinking about how do I provide mental health and psychosocial support with older people, you need to know their situation. You need to be aware of the challenges they face. You need to know about all that has been shared in this particular study when you're planning and thinking about supporting them after an emergency. So the next slide, I won't go into this in too much detail. This is actually from a report by HelpAge India last year called Women in Aging, Invisible or Empowered. And this is also very important to think about. What are the challenges older people are currently facing now, and then an emergency happens? Because these will tend to be exacerbated. And some of the ones we may be talking about or looking at a little later is the changing family structure, the changing ways they live, the changes in community, social support. What is the social support? Can they access? I also mentioned, where is it? Social protection, pensions, financial security, healthcare, access to healthcare. Is it accessible? Is it affordable? And elder abuse is a very big issue indeed. And I don't go into it in detail in this talk, But we know from humanitarian crises, from emergencies, when people lose loved ones, when they lose property, when they're displaced, when they lose livelihood, when others are dependent on them, tensions rise, and in many cases, issues to do with family disputes or gender based violence and elder abuse does increase. And this is something we really need to keep in mind. Okay, the next slide. And before we go on to this, I want to ask, are there any questions or anything that you would like to share with me about what we've just covered? Don't be shy. Anything that you would like to share? You can put it in the chat or put your hand up. No?
I had, it's not a question, but something that surprised me was the statistics that said 80% of older people will live in lower middle income countries by 2050. I was assuming since the life expectancy might worse, I
Can
was
you can
yeah,
you
I
repeat?
was just wondering, will there be any factors that is leading to this higher, percentage
Well,
in the lower middle income countries?
life expectancy is obviously increasing and has increased in those countries for different reasons. And it's also um, the size of the populations in Asia as well. That means that there's 80% are older people. So even though in Europe the percentage of older people is higher, say we have, something like, I think it's 23 or 24% of people in Europe, maybe UK, are over 60. And then in India, it's a lower percentage. It's because of the size of the populations in Asia that you have
Mm-hmm.
this percentage,
Yeah.
Anna.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'm sorry the sound isn't very good, but I hope you're hearing me okay. Yeah? You can give me a thumbs up. Can you do that on Zoom? I don't think you can. Okay, so let's continue, but do please jump in. So now we're looking, I'll just do a recap on what it is we mean by mental health and psychosocial support. So if we go on to the next slide, mental health and psychosocial support, well, these are they're a combined term that are put together, and it aims to, if we put it up, it aims to, if you click on the slide, prevent the development of long-term psychological consequences to an emergency. Now, when an emergency happens, we have normal reactions: fear, upset, anger, depression, worry. We may not, talk to others. We may talk too much. We may want to be on our own. All of those things are normal reactions to an extraordinary, distressing event. However, if that support is not provided, is not available, then it is possible that those normal reactions will become more problematic and dysfunctional, and they could develop into more long-term psychological consequences. So that's the first aim of MHPSS. The second one is to promote the inner resourcefulness, the resilience, the coping strategies that we all have, right? Some of us more so than others, but it's about recognizing the coping strategies, the resilience. It's about respecting the independence and the dignity of people. That is the other aim of MHPSS. And the third one then is it's also focusing on the social context or recognizing the social context that's important to a person's well-being? Their family, their community. Have they access to basic services, food, shelter, water, healthcare, information? All of those are very important to a person's well-being, and that needs to be really kept in mind. So I'm sure you're familiar with the definition about what health is, mental health is. This comes from the WHO, a state of mental well-being. You're able to cope well with the stresses in life, realize your potential, feel you're a productive person in your community and that you can contribute. With psychosocial, this term, it comes from psychological and social. And the psychological, it describes, it's about those internal aspects of who we are, our thoughts, our feelings, our beliefs, our attitudes, our values, our behaviors. And then the social is about our relationships with others in our community, our friends, family, the culture, the religion, the environment we've been brought up in, our finances, poverty, livelihoods, and so on. And this psychosocial, it's a dynamic relationship between the psychological and the social, each influencing the other and impacting our well-being in the middle. So yeah, so when you look at an emergency situation, in this example here, what we're saying is, so what's the impact on my psychological self with an emergency? So you may be feeling grief, you've lost loved ones, property, you may be feeling depressed or anxious. Maybe this has happened a number of times and you've just, run out of that strength. You may be angry and despair. Also, if you're someone that has a pre-existing mental health problem, then maybe the support you had before is not available. Maybe the medication you had isn't available, so that will be exacerbated. Then the impact on your social life. Well, separated from family and friends, you're displaced. You might be living in a new location with people you don't know. You've lost loved ones, property destroyed. You feel unsafe. Your social networks are broken. If you lived in a situation where it was poverty beforehand, that's even made more serious. And these, as we said, are dynamic. They influence and impact each other and impact our psychosocial well-being. And it's in here that mental health and psychosocial support is trying to provide that support, psychological and social aspect of us, to prevent them getting worse. Now, to the next slide, I'm going to ask you to look at this, because I know you've done this before in the previous exercise. So here, the IASC guidelines on mental health and psychosocial support in an emergency. So they have level 1, 2, 3, and 4. Now, what I want you to do, not sure how we'll do it, Hannah, but maybe people can put it in chat, is I want to tell you where these labels correctly go. Focus person to person, non-specialized support, specialized services, strengthening community, basic support services. What levels do they relate to on our pyramid? Because these are all relevant to, our MHPSS support in an emergency. So would you like to put that in a chat? Where level 1 goes. What's the correct label for level 1, level 2? Okay, so Abdul, what's the correct label for level 1? Which do you think it is? Focus person to person, or strengthening community and family supports? specialized service?
Basic support service and security.
Basic support services and security. That is correct. Thank you. Okay, for level 2, anybody want to suggest what will go into level 2? Which one goes to level 2? Okay, Ida says community. So Ida, are you saying strengthening community and family supports? Oh, here we go. Look, someone has done it all together. So if we look at that, level 1, basic support services and community. Level 2, strengthening community and family support. 3, focus person to person. And 4, specialized services. So thanks to the last participant who listed them all there. I know we could do it better in the next session. So we'll have the next slide. Now, here we have a number of activities. You can click them all, Hannah. Now, you've already labeled, oh, go back, thanks. Now, you've already labeled the slides. What I want you to do here is with these activities, and these are activities that HelpAge very much involved in, where do they come? And this isn't very hard. So if we look at support by trained staff or volunteers for specific issues, where would that come? Level 1, 2, 3, or 4? And you can type it in the chat. Where do you think that one comes? 3. Okay, anybody else? Thanks for that. Any other suggestions? Support for by trained staff, community workers? Anybody else want to guess? Okay, let's not delay. Correct. It's in level 3. It's coming into our focus person support where there's a little bit more training with your community worker, staff member. Okay, so let's look at mobilize and support community support networks. Where do you think that comes? 1, 2, or 4? 2. Yes, Ida, you're the winner. It comes in 2. Thank you, Hannah. You're in a little bit late, but yes, that's coming in number 2. And then, I mean, the last 2 are easy. Referral to a specialized psychological or counseling support. Where do you, 4? Exactly. That's very good. And then 5 isn't there. Sorry. Humor is a very good psychosocial well-being technique. Yes, Mukta, 4. And then the last one, well, the last in this, what comes in level 1 is assessing the needs, risk, capacities, basic needs of older people. That comes in level 1. So thank you for the chat. Yes, 1 is correct. So we go on to the next slide. Now, and click again, Hannah, because it comes up, and again, you get the whole thing up there. Okay? And click again. There's 2 more, I think, coming, and 1 more time. Okay, back. So here is what your MHPSS intervention. And what I have included here is the activities that we have actually done in some of our emergency responses and the levels, and what levels. So level 1, assessing older people's needs, capacities and skills and situations, providing practical support with accessing basic needs, food, water, shelter, feeling safe, all of those that have a huge impact on your mental health and psychosocial well-being. Giving information about the emergency situation, sharing information in different ways on where to get support. Level 2, mobilizing community volunteers, older people associations, community leaders, religious leaders, starting up some activities to get people linked in together, reminding people that there are older people in the community, there are people who need support we need to reach out to, working with caregivers. Level 3, maybe more targeted. It can be focused or non-specialized kind of support, starting up group support. It can be setting up peer support. It can have trained volunteers on providing basic psychosocial support, psychological first aid, look, listen, link, and so on. And then at level 4, we're looking at the specialized services. So that's where the small percentage of older people, people in general, in an emergency who will need that specialized mental health support from a psychologist, from a psychiatrist, and so on. So the higher the needs, as we go up the pyramid, the more training will be needed for us, our volunteers, and along the base, that is where the largest percentage of people needing support. So as you go up, the number gets smaller. That's where we're working at. So we move on to the next slide. For me, another simple way looking at, psychosocial support, and that is psychosocial health. And when we're thinking about how it is we work with older people, talk, engage, and plan the support that we are doing, we should think about mental health, thinking, social health, relating to others and their community, emotional health, how are they feeling, and indeed spiritual health that can be very important for many people in an emergency situation. Now, the next slide, and let's keep a look at the time, Hannah, because I know I might be a little bit behind. I have a question for you, and I want you to put it in the chat. Who do you think are the most vulnerable, or we use the term most at risk, older person in an emergency? Okay, so if you could just put in the chat, because remember we were saying not everybody's the same, and some people have skills and capacities and in a different situation. But in an emergency, who do you think are the most vulnerable, are the most at risk within older people? Disabled, yeah, a disabled older person, exactly. Anything else? Who else? Maybe they're disabled and they're living with a family member who's well able to support them. They might not be that vulnerable then. Older person who's not living with their family. Old age, Nancy, I think you mean they're the older age. Bedridden, yes. Widow, single person. Exactly. And with those examples that you've given, you're recognizing that there are older people who are more at risk than others. And let's have a look at some. If we have the next slide, please. So here I've just listed out some in relation to much of the work that we do. Older people with mobility difficulties and that they're dependent on family support. Isolated, single older people who are disabled. An isolated older couple or couples where one or both partners have a disability. Maybe an older person living alone and is dependent on others to meet their needs, or an older person living with a chronic illness. Or you could have an isolated older person who are carers for children. Also, you think about the dynamics in relation to if it's an older woman living on her own with a disability or an older man, and so on. So even though we do recognize the diversities within older people and that they have many capacities, we also know that in an emergency, in a humanitarian crisis, older people face particular threats or risks to their safety, security, and ability to survive. And this is very important for us to know and recognize. Now, with the next slide, so what kind of impact do you think an emergency has on an older person? Would you like to put something in the chat? And I'm sorry, we're a little bit over time, but oh no, we're fine, I think, for time. So what kind of impact on an older person's mental health and psychosocial well-being would an emergency have? Anybody want to suggest anything in the chat? How do you think it would impact them? So just imagine you're an older person, maybe you have a disability, maybe you're living on your own, and there's an emergency, there's a flooding, there's a landslide. Some emergency has happened. How do you think it's going to impact you as that older person? No? Okay, let's bring up the next slide then, Hannah. Scared for sure, absolutely. Well, you're going to be, for those that are, unable to move, are unwilling, or they're reluctant to leave their homes, they're going to have limited access to food, healthcare, water, and other necessities. From our chat, people have said a feeling of giving up on everything, including yourself. Yes, that would be despair, feeling hopeless or hopelessness, helpless, exactly, feeling like you're losing, you're lost. Agree. And another click, Hannah, what else do we have? If you're in a situation where it's ongoing, it's a prolonged exposure to a conflict. You can think of civil wars. I think of Sri Lanka. Think of a situation where there's a threat to life. Think of Ukraine. Think of uh, Syria, Gaza. You're insecure. You're worried for your life. If there's a situation you have no access to basic supplies, you're isolated, loss of independence, all of these impact an older person's mental health and psychosocial well-being. You'll be feeling increased worry, loneliness, anxiety, isolated from family and friends. The other one, I think if you click, it's there. You think about, maybe you were an older man or an older woman and you were providing for your family and you owned some livestock and you had a livelihood and an emergency happens and all of that is gone. And before this, you were respected and looked up to within your family, within your community, and then suddenly it's all gone, right? Now you're starting to feel like a burden on family and the community. And I think in the chat, and you mentioned things like helpless and so on. So they're the kind of impacts that the emergency can have on a person's well-being. So the next slide. So here with this slide, what I have summarized here is after an emergency, older people cope and manage better over time if the following can be done. If they can feel safe, if they can feel connected, if they have access to social, physical, and emotional support, if they feel calm, if they can feel calm, if they feel they have some control of the situation, if they're connected to others, we've repeated that, and if they have a sense or can keep a sense of hope. That really is the ultimate aim of MHPSS when working with anybody, including older people, after an emergency. This is what we are trying to achieve. We're trying to help people feel safe, feel connected, feel that they have some control, that they have a reason to feel hope and to feel calm. That is what we are trying to do with MHPSS with older people. Now, Hannah, can I just check with you? If you go back, I would like to ask people, how are we for time, Hannah? Just to check.
We have 20 minutes left.
What I'd like to know is, do you think we have time for a short breakout group? Just even if we had two groups, or is it too few?
Yes, we will have 7 people in each group.
Okay, So what I would like to suggest, colleagues, is we break out into two groups, okay? And in each group, what I would like you to discuss, we're not going to take long. We're just going to talk about it.
Stay, no?
Sorry, say that again, Hannah.
Apologies, ma'am. Please go on. That's
No, that's okay. And you correct me if I'm wrong, Hannah. We break into two groups, and what I want the question, and we put it in the chat, is after emergency, how do you think you could help older people feel safe, have access to social, physical, emotional support, feel calm, feel they've control, connected to others, have a sense of hope? I just want you to come up with, you know, maybe just one suggestion, one activity for each of those. And at the same time, to think about like what is it you would have to consider or keep in mind. I'm going to put it in the chat, Hannah, if I can. So,
sure.
how does that sound? Is that something we could do? And you just spend a couple of minutes talking in your group about this, if I can find chat. So, after emergency, how do you think? You know, what is it you would do? And you can, I mean, you may not have time to go through all of these, but look at some of them and in the group put together what it is you would do, how you'd start, and what you'd do. And then you will share with us.
All right. So I'll put people into two different groups.
Yeah. Um, and I will join each group for a couple of minutes just to see that they are okay.
Sure, ma'am.
And give it 5 minutes, Hannah. I'm sorry, there's not really a lot of time.
Yes, ma'am. I am keeping a track of time, so I can close the group by that time.
Okay. Okay, so and I'll once they're all assigned, are they all assigned? Why hasn't Peter signed?
They are assigned.
Some are not joining. Okay, that's fine. I'm going to jump into room 2 and then I'll be back, okay?
Sure.
Okay, I'm in the main group now. See. Okay, let's keep an eye on the time. Hannah, oh yeah, you're in group one. Let's see. Okay, let's see. How are we? How are we doing for time, Michelle? Let's see. No. Oh, good. I think we should close up now, Michelle or Hannah. I'm not sure if Hannah can hear me. Do, 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 do. Um, okay. I don't know if you can hear me, Hannah. Let me see, maybe you're not.
Ma'am, I think we shall close the breakout rooms.
Yeah, please do. I'm sorry, I was trying to, I think I sent a message just in the general one. But yeah, we need to close them because I don't want to keep people over time too much. And I like to hear what they said. So can we?
So everybody is back. So
Oh,
maybe,
everyone's back.
no, not really. They're on the, sorry.
Okay. Are the groups back?
Um, and do you want to respond in the chat box or speak?
No, I think if someone from each group was very brave enough just to give a couple of feedback points from each of their sessions, that would be great.
All right.
So from group one, who would like to share what suggestions you came up with in relation to the question? Oops, I'm lost. Where am I? So if you remember, we were asking, after an emergency, how do you think you could help older people with that list? Feel safe, access to social, physical, emotional support, feel connected, feel calm. Anybody would like to share what was said in the group?
Ma'am, we just discussed about approaching the people
Yeah.
to get back the early threats and what possessed the threats to them and what they were expecting.
Yes.
And we discussed that through a feedback mechanism technique, evidence collection tool, or like volunteering the persons in volunteering in person. We could collect the earlier threats and needs, and we can alter it from not happening it again.
Okay, thank you very much for that. That's a start. Anybody else would like to add to that? Okay, before I respond, can I hear from group two? What is it you think you would do? What would you need to think about? Come on now, don't be shy. How do you think you would help older people? Do you want to add to what was shared by the other group? Okay, no. So, thank you.
Okay.
Yes, please, come on.
Yes, I would like to present in behalf of my group, since Dr. Ida has some technical issues. Uh, we can move them to a safe place and assist in their basic needs first and attend to personal care. And
Yeah.
the next step would be to counsel them uh, to impart a sense of hope in them. And if needed, we can refer them to the specialist care. Like we kind of went into the level 1, 2, 3, 4 of attending to their psychosocial needs.
Thank you very much for that. And thanks to both groups for sharing that. You talked about feedback mechanisms in the first group, understanding their threats and needs. And in the second group, moving them to a safe place, checking on their basic needs and referring them to a specialized service. To me, for me, it all begins with how you talk to someone. If you're looking at how to make someone feel safe and feel calm, for sure you're looking at their environment and is it safe, especially after an emergency. But it's also how you talk with them. How do you engage with them? What's your body language? It's also about what it is you understand about their situation. So our second person was on about, understanding their basic needs, understanding what are the risks they're faced with and the challenges that they meet. So there's many different things you can do if you want to try to support them on that list. Connecting with others, finding out about their family situation, finding out where they've been displaced from. Is anybody around them a neighbor, a friend? Did anybody know any details about them? One of the things we did, especially in Ukraine, with people that were displaced into other countries, was get phone numbers, support them in contacting family that actually lived somewhere else. That helps them feel more connected, sharing information with them, accurate information. So to finish up, and thank you for that, I'm sorry that it wasn't as helpful as it could be, that exercise, but let me share with you some of the things that we do in HelpAge, right? So press the slide there, Hannah, and we'll start looking at some of the activities. So when it comes to MHPSS and psychosocial support with older people, you start by meeting, talking, engaging with older people. Older People's Association, Senior Citizens Association. I know that HelpAge India works a lot with senior citizens and associations. You're learning about the older person's situation, the risks they face, their psychosocial needs, their capacities, and their ways of coping, and how it is they want to be supported. That's really where the starting point is. What are the barriers they're facing in maybe accessing services, or what is their situation? And we've already looked at that study about the situation of older people in India. We also have to remember that many people, including older people, are not always comfortable, speaking about mental health or psychosocial well-being, because there's huge stigma attached to it. So we have to be sensitive about that and use the right language. And we have to be aware of the different communication needs of older people. Older people that may have problems speaking, or they have a disability, or they've had a stroke, or they may not be able to hear. How do you cross that barrier? Also, mobilize and train community volunteers. What are you going to train them on? You're going to train them on, I know you covered psychological first aid. There's also some really good, simple training on basic psychosocial skills. It does take, I don't know, a day or 2 days, but it's good communication skills, how to support someone who's grieving, how to support someone with feeling very distressed. Very simple, practical skills that can be taught to community volunteers and who can provide it to others. Someone mentioned referring them to specialists. It's really important to build a link, map out who is doing what in this location. Where is the government support from psychologists and psychiatrists? Can I recognize an older person who needs a specialized service? And how do I refer them? The next slide, please, Anna. I'm sorry about the time. So if you click it again, intergenerational links. These are very important. How can I link up younger people? Maybe it's younger volunteers in the community with older people. How can I encourage activities with them? Different generations, maybe in the family. Not only does it support the older person, but it can help combat ageism, loneliness, and isolation. In some countries, we've had younger people teaching older people how to use tablets and smartphones. And it was a really good exercise in that country where it was relevant. Building social connections. Many older people can cope very well, so we can have peer support, one-to-one, or peer support groups. Encourage older people to be volunteers. It's really important that they feel that they contribute. Physical activity and exercise. This can be any kind of simple activity, exercise, health sessions, yoga, Pilates. There's a whole number of different things that can be done. And it's good to ask older people what it is they're interested in getting involved in. And the next slide is an important one. Back again, back one more, back there. Sharing accurate and important information. We know from COVID there was different information going around. Older people did suffer a lot. It was hard to get information, different information about how contagious it is. You know, in an emergency, there's all sorts of different information going out. Some of it is not correct. Some of it is. Some of it is shared in one format, maybe in a leaflet. But what about older people that have different communication needs? So we have to be ready to share the information in different ways. It may be face to face, it may be through leaflets, it may be through a trusted friend. But having information about what's happening, why it happened, where I can get support can increase a person's feeling of control. All right. And then I think we're at the last slide. The next slide is about community activities. If you click again, so this is about providing community activities in a safe space. So it's opportunities for older people to meet with each other, connect with each other, meet with younger people. The quote here is from India, and she says, "We were so lonely before our classes started, dance classes." She's 95, but now dancing helps us get together to talk and share our problems, and we feel that our mental health is better already. And then the last slide, in relation to the type of support, someone mentioned earlier bedridden, outreach support. We need to reach out to isolated older people. So it might be people living alone, maybe they are bedbound, maybe they have a disability, maybe it's an older person caring for someone else and they cannot leave the home. We need to reach out to them to ensure they can meet their basic needs and they have access to information and important services. Spiritual support as well. Many older people are deeply spiritual and it can help in their mental health and well-being. So it's important to keep that in mind. And then the last slide is there is many different resources out there, colleagues, that are available in relation to mental health and psychosocial support. The basic psychosocial skills, the guide for COVID responders, that has been adapted by colleagues in Sri Lanka for online training and training with volunteers. And it's not focusing just on a COVID response, but it's on about basic psychosocial skills for any response. And I recommend it highly. And all of these can be adapted to a particular emergency and situation. And then the last slide, Hannah, and I am 5 minutes over. Thank you. I'd like to thank everybody that stayed to the end. I'm very grateful for that. Apologies for the technical hiccup and so on. And I'll hand back now to Hannah. Thank you, Hannah.
Thank you so much, ma'am. It was indeed a great session. I would like to quickly ask if any participants have any questions or concerns. Feel free to raise your hands or put it up in the chat box. Since we have gone over time, something is commented. Okay. Quite interesting topic, learning. So much joy, concern. So since it's gone overboard on time, I believe like we can stop now, but participants also can reach out to us and to clarify any of the questions. So I would like to extend a big thank you to Dr. Marion. Ma'am, like to be very honest, the session was very informative. There was so much information for us to take back, and I know that there's a tendency that we all older people as vulnerable, and something that you said really stuck. Like not all older people are vulnerable. That's a good realization, and a lot of people have things that you pointed out about many statistics about disability. Everything was very informative and thought provoking, I would say. It is very helpful, like when we go into the field for any like relief activities. This is something that we can really think about and be aware of. So thank you so much for your time. The session was really great, and yes, we'll be. I hope we can share the presentation with the participants. I hope that would be okay with you. And also, we have the recording, which we are hoping to put it up in the YouTube for more people to listen. Thank you so much, ma'am, for your time. We are ever grateful for you to this. And also, I would like to thank all the participants who have stayed with us. I hope the session was beneficial for you all too. And thank you all for your active participation this time. And thank you, everyone. I think we can close the session today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Hannah. Thanks, everybody. Yeah. Really good.
Thank you.